Yes, we're back. Okay. They can see that we are not bots, Andrew.
There you go.
We are not
Authenticity.
bots. Yeah,
Yeah.
we are not bots. Okay. There was one thing that I wanted to, one last thing that I wanted to cover about Dallas that I wanted to get your perspective on. And then we're going to go over to Miami.
Oh, cool.
Okay. In the news, it stated that hotel demand in Texas was underperforming and that Texas hotel bookings have reportedly underperformed for this period. And some of the factors were it was difficult for fans to tie in with the marketing share. They wanted them to do their own marketing. So those were some of the articles. Now, we were just touching on these things. This is not a political show. This is not what we're doing. We're just bringing the facts out. So, Andrew, my question to you is when you went to Texas, boots on the ground, what was your feeling of the visa challenges and political tensions,
Hmm.
and all of these things that they claim are a factor for the hotels underperforming in Texas right now?
Yeah, I'd say again, those aren't unique necessarily to the Dallas in general. I think we're seeing that around different. There are some of those threads that are touching on a lot of the host cities. U.S. and that Mexico has had certain challenges, and Canada.
Mhm.
But again, I got to come back to my first statement of like, in comparison to a lot of other cities that I'd been to, I heard much less like concern and talk about some of the detraction, some of those challenges with the World Cup than in other places. So again, less to
Tell me
me
more about
from
that.
soccer fans on the ground. Yeah, people on the ground just saying, hey, we're excited. We want to welcome the world here. I think part of it could be, they've got a lot of the big names. They're going to have Messi playing there twice. They'll have England, the Netherlands, and, Croatia's really strong team. They'll have Japan. I apologize to, your Swedens and other ones who I can't think off the top, but
Mhm,
they know, I
mhm.
think as fans, they see the talent and the level that's coming through. And I think Dallas is, again, it's one of those places that they definitely don't think that they might think they don't think they're an underdog. They think maybe they're overlooked a little bit being in the middle of the country, but I think they kind of see this as an opportunity, and not to prove to other people, but just like, so hey, we love this game and we're gonna do it big and celebrate it our way. So I think that was more of the conversations I had, was people more focused on that and like the opportunity versus some of the challenges.
Okay. So that's good to know. Do you also, and this may be a difficult question, but you kind of touched on it a little bit, so I want to kind of bring it out. Do you feel that the host cities are carrying an enormous cost because of the taxes that I mean they're excited to bring in,
Hmm.
they're excited to invite the world to their home.
Yeah.
But another thing that was mentioned was I want to just read this to make sure that I'm saying it right, that host cities are carrying enormous costs while FIFA captures massive revenue upside, where, a lot of people have been upset these activations, well, not the activations, but the fan festival areas that the cities are having to build those out in hopes of, being reimbursed after
Hmm.
the games. But the money, the upfront cost has to come from the cities, where some cities chose to, bring in more sponsors, more of those local, I call mid operators, businesses to help front some of the cost. But did anyone even mention any of that? Or is that even something that they're even talking about, boots on the ground?
Yeah, I don't think that I had heard that like directly as much in Dallas as maybe some of the other cities. Yeah, and that's something that again I don't know that I have enough like insight. I've talked to some people and get their take, and maybe might have their ear a little bit more. You would probably know better than I, especially on that the brand sponsor side of kind of some of the insight to that. But yeah, I think my thought is more, I don't know that like certain things, I think like we gave the example in Foxborough of that, the $7.9 million and that like security issue. And I think that was something that it was just so like specific, but also kind of left field we're not used to, where that seemed to get more attention. versus I think just like the general, what are the pros and cons for the host committees working with FIFA? I don't know that that part comes out to fans as much. I feel like that seems more like in your, again, we're talking about it because it is taking more of that business lens to it. And I think that fans are looking at more of, okay, well, what's going to be at the fan fest? Will the fan fest be free? Right? Some cities are having free fan fest. Some are not able to do that. Some
Yeah.
cities are activating like every day of the tournament for 45 days. Others 18 or 27 days, again, because of some of those pressures. So I think, again, boots on the ground, that didn't come out as much of that dynamic. It's more fans are looking at ticket prices and then what is their access personally to be able to do it. And I think it's just a small portion of people were thinking more of that, like, well, what does this mean bigger picture for this region or for the financial well-being of the local businesses or local governments who made that investment in trying to bring the world's game there.
Okay. And what have you seen in your let me rephrase that question. What have you I want to talk about the unticketed fans
Mhm.
who come to the games, come to the fan festival sites where they because of the high ticket price. That has also been something that has been talked about, not just Dallas, but it's been talked about that the ticket prices, $2,000 for a seat. They did have some that were like $600, but there was one in, I think, New York, New Jersey, that was $2.3 million.
I don't know how that happens, right? Was that a typo? Did somebody fall asleep on their keyboard? I don't know.
Yes, I mean, it had a decimal, not a comma.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
had the ones that had a comma, you're like, "Huh." When we heard that the most expensive seat in Dubai was $120 USD.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah. The Qatar World Cup was like much more reasonable. And I think a lot of those group matches and things were, yeah, like some of the ticket prices we're seeing for like the initial games in this World Cup are what people paid for, semifinals and quarterfinals. And so I think that's definitely been a bigger talking point of, hey, well, but I think it comes back to, and for this conversation as well, like, well, what is the World Cup experience, right? Is it only in the stadium? Can you
mhm.
only have that proper experience if you go to a game? And then we kind of come back, like we've been saying, it's about the whole, again, this word gets used a lot, but that whole vibe and atmosphere of just being with people and it just starts to build and you feel it, a little bit before the match. And it's, you're in Dallas, but you're watching the game in Vancouver or in Guadalajara, the bar or the fan fest, or it's just, somebody's got it on their phone while you're waiting in line at the pizza shop or something, right? Again, I think that, that's something that, again, is to be thought about. You thought about your angle. It's like, how can you tie in some of those other places or moments into how you reach fans, right? And I think I look at that a lot from my angle of the content and the storytelling, because do I look at this as I can only really tell good stories if I get media access and I'm in the stadium, or what's the story, in Dallas with those, that good 30% of Argentina fans who didn't have a
Yes,
ticket, but they're just with their friends and sleeping
yes.
on the couch or on the floor, right? Is there a story of, there's 25 people in a one bedroom Airbnb? I think stories are, you talk about your corridor, but it's like, how do you tell the stories around that too from a brand perspective? There's just like no end to it with the colors, the flags people have, the hats the people wear, the type of music they're going to make and listen to, the songs they will sing, the food and drinks, and just how they do their thing. Like that's, one of the content, it was more the freelance content we did with some of our partners in Dallas, was like looking at, okay, of all the countries coming to Dallas, which has the best food if you had to pick, or which is the best alcoholic drink, right? And it was fun because people were like, okay, Japan's coming, sushi, easy, like ramen, or oh, we've got England, you'd like a nice fish and chips, or Argentina, a nice Argentine steak or empanada, right? There's so many ways to look at the game. And again, soccer in many cases just kind of like the excuse. And there is certainly drama in the games themselves, but it's just
Mhm.
all the life that happens outside of it.
My goodness. That is so the fan that says, "This is my team from my country that's never been in the World Cup, or
Mm.
it's been 30 years. I cannot afford the $2,000 ticket, the $4,000 ticket, the $6,000 ticket, but I want to represent my country,
Mhm.
my team. Where does that fan usually go, Andrew?
Good question. I think a lot of people have been trying to think that as well, and how to be able to meet them, right? I think there's, some people might look at your typical soccer bars, right? Like we cover those in Dallas, and every city we've gone to, we've tried to tell that story of like, this is where people come to meet. And they get up and watch games in Europe at 7 in the morning, and it's a breakfast with the game. And why, right? Why get up early? So I think there's that. I think, the fan fest are certainly hoping hoping for that. But again, like we said, if someone is spending a week somewhere, what's the likelihood they're going to the fan fest every day, right? I think it's like, they kind of get a sense of that. That's why I look at a place like Dallas. Again, I'm not quite as familiar. I was there, I think, 6 days. I can't like rattle the names off, but there are certain pockets where you have multiple bars and restaurants in a space. I think it is still going to be a largely people want to feel the energy in and be in public, right? Even though we said it's hot. So
Mhm,
they're gonna maybe want to be inside somewhere with a patio, and the fans going, and being able to catch the game on TV.
mhm.
So I think it's more of those. You have the games running, so a TV is part of that, and it's people just want to enjoy themselves, and that's going to be eating and drinking. But I don't think it necessarily has to be only your typical sports bar. I think
Okay.
there's a lot of type of the food and bev that can kind of, if they position themselves, and just something like putting maybe some flags out, right, of those teams. Obviously, I'm always looking at the content and storytelling,
Yeah.
using the value of the way a lot of the algorithms are working, and with keywords of saying like, hey, World Cup in this city, or of course you have to be careful about your licensing and
Mhm,
what you can and can't say. But,
mhm.
hey, Argentina fan, like, come try this. Or, if you're a bar, like, what do people in those places like to drink? What can you meet them halfway with a certain type of alcohol, and then tell the story around that? So again, I think it comes back a lot to eating and drinking. There's going to be an element of that that's in public, and dancing together and singing together where people are going to celebrate. But I think that it really just depends on more on creating and facilitating that type of space for everybody to kind of pour that passion and energy into.
Okay, okay. So if you're in Dallas or any of the host cities and you don't have a ticket, but you manage to buy a plane ticket or however you got to your host city and you're staying in some sort of lodging, whether it's a hotel or like you said, an Airbnb, and you got 19 other people with you, you are suggesting that, which is great, that you find the local place that is going to have that experience where the fans will gather together so that you can still experience it. You don't have to be in your room. You can
Hmm.
go to the local bar, or if the fan festival is low cost, if you can get a ticket, or if it's free, but still be around that area so that you can, like you say, well, I know we say that energy, but it allows them to still experience the game without
Yeah.
being
Hmm.
inside of the stadium. Is that right?
Hmm. 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. 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 So, Dallas, one of the things that I like about Dallas is the community involvement. And I'll just leave that there because like I said with Boston, I think at the end of the day Boston is going to do really well. With Dallas, they have so much community involvement that it's going to probably be a learning experience for them. But what they've activated on a local level, like for example, for the last 3 to 4 months, and this is May. And so for the last 3 or 4 months, their local FIFA, because I don't know if I explained this to you all. There's three FIFAs. So there's FIFA International, like the governing FIFA
Hmm.
board. And then after that, they open up a FIFA for the continent. So for us, North America, it's the US, Mexico, Canada. So that's that FIFA. And then host cities have a FIFA as well. And we kind of call that little FIFA on the international side. So when we're in board meetings and they're talking about, they'll say like, little FIFA Dallas, because that's little FIFA. Then so there's 3 levels to the FIFA organization. So you've got FIFA International, and then you have whatever the continent is, whatever that is, and then you've got the host cities. So Dallas host city, to me, it is the greatest corporate opportunity for brands because of the amount of games, because of the space of the fan festival. If I was a corporate entity, I would find myself figuring out a way to have any type of sponsorship during the games in Dallas, because to me, it is the biggest opportunity for a return on your investment to find a fan. You can find a fan in Argentina that can connect with your brand. And because social media is so small, and you be able to, that young person could watch a video from Andrew, of going to Argentina one day, and they now have that core memory, and you have a fan for life. And that can even be if you are a local, t-shirt company, local hoodie, sweatshirt company. If you connect with the fan and you create a core memory, that is what we call sponsor impact. And so that is when it plays into, oh, I was at the game, or it was before the game. I was with my dad. I was with my grandfather. Then they bought me this shirt, and you get that experience, that emotion, because we all are emotional people, well, for the most part. We
For sure.
we purchase on emotions and things like that. So I do believe that Dallas is number 1 so far. Anything you want to add for Dallas before we go to Miami?
No, I can see where you're saying that, right? For sure. We didn't talk about barbecue, right? We didn't even mention that. We didn't even mention, kind of the variety. I think Dallas has this,
Talk about it.
hey, sure, this, I guess more technically Fort Worth is like your rodeo and that kind of experience, and people think the Cowboys, but the football team and just, a cowboy in general. But it is very much like a metropolitan city with tons of art and culture. And, I think I compare it to like a Seattle, maybe, where Seattle is such an outdoorsy type of city. People like to do things. Like we're saying that Texas is hot. It's like, I've heard about Dallas, and to extent Houston, it's like, what do people like to do? They like to eat, right? So it's like they like to come together, be together, and celebrate moments. And so I agree. I think people are ready for it, and it would be a great opportunity. And I've already had some great stories put out, and more coming, because there's just so much fascinating things happening in soccer there in the community.
I love that. And you brought up the barbecue. So I'll say to all the CMOs that are activating in Texas, I think your CFO is going to ask for the return on investment sooner than later, when he gets that budget sheet and sees all of the
They're per
what was
diems, right?
per diems and what was spent on food, because the food is absolutely delicious. Barbecue where you can twist the bone and
Oh
pull
yeah.
it out clean.
I was doing a video, right? I went for my barbecue, and I was like about to pull it up to show the camera, and the meat just fell right off. It was like, I was like, couldn't even do anything about it. And people are so competitive too, and like about what is the best barbecue spot in Dallas. So I think there's so much potential for, like, when you talk about your social media and stories, of playing that off. And of course, if you're there for a few days, you got to try as many as you can. Some are only open in the morning. Some you got to have this side versus the other. So there's so much. It's like me being from Philly, the cheesesteaks. It's the same type of life or death approach to the food, which, people have to be aware of.
I love that. I love that. And one thing about Texas is there can be a little barbecue shop next to a gas station, or connected to a gas station, and it could be the best barbecue in the whole little city, a whole little town, a whole little area. It's like, oh, you need to go down to so and so by the gas station right next to it. That's our barbecue right over there, and that is the place to get the best brisket, hands down. And you're like, wait, what? It works. Try it. But yes, Dallas, you guys have a real opportunity, and we are going to be watching and we are going to be covering and sharing, and we are excited to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, but mostly the good. But we hope that you guys take what we are saying and implement so that you can be better, because being better is
Absolutely.
what it's about.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my goodness. Okay. Andrew, it's time to talk about Miami.
Welcome to Miami. Let's go.
Miami, Miami, Miami. Okay. So, my brief on Miami is the following. Miami already operates like a global gateway city. It is luxury oriented, it's multilingual. We've got the Latin American football culture that's already fluent. We have the Hard Rock Stadium that sits inside of the hospitality heavy market. They're already accustomed to having VIP experiences. The nightlife is live, beach tourism, premium activation. Miami will likely be one of the most glamorous of the U.S. host cities experience when it comes to the tournament. You have just the beautiful scenery, you have the sprawling homes in Miami. You have just, I mean, right on the water.
Mm-hmm.
Miami, the culture is alive. The traffic, we've also heard that there's a little bit of security complexity. We also heard that the prices of the hotels have gone up. I think one article I read, just trying to see if I can find it. One article I read, it said by 236% in some
Wow.
hotels that it's gone up. And so for me, I feel like my overall thesis for this moment is that Miami is, when it comes to international environment, Miami is probably the closest we are going to be able to show the world, because of that melting pot of diversity
Mm.
in Miami. So, Andrew, please share with us the good. We're going to get into some other stuff, but share the good, share what boots on the ground was like when you went to visit Miami.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you make a great point. Like, definitely has that like luxury angle. It's got the beach, there's going to be shots of the palm trees that I think other cities not quite. I mean, LA has its own little bit of a feeling like that, but I think people might associate more in Miami. I know certainly you mentioned, the Latin American influence, the multilingualism, you see that on the radio, you see that on the billboards, and people are just, that's just how it is, right? And so I think if people aren't as familiar with Miami, it's very different from other cities in that way, like culturally. But then I think you also it has a huge international profile, not only from the Latin American context, but like from Europe, right? And a lot of those fans, people are like, they just want to go to South Beach and rent a Lamborghini for the day, right? That's what every, guy I know from the UK wants to do. And they want to go to be in the clubs and all that. So there is certainly that element. And I think in the soccer community, you get a sense of that. I think you get like the creativity, you get people that want to work together and do like really cool events and things. So I found this, I mean, they're more or less formal now, but it's like a lot of different people in the soccer community, whether they are in sports tech, they're running cash prize tournaments, they have, apparel brands, they kind of have these, they call like the SOFO, South Florida Committee. We'll give them a shout out of these people have just come together and helped to promote each other and put events together in kind of a grassroots way. I think you have that. I think you have Miami being 100% a soccer city. You can, like, people are playing it, the amount of small-sided fields, right? Like every plays five-a-side, and there's little turf fields and facilities all over the city, or people are playing in parks, and you have people from everywhere, right? And that extends into the fandom too. So I feel like in general, there's pretty high like soccer cultural literacy in Miami that you might not see in some other areas. So I think then in that sense, brands have to be kind of aware of who they're trying to target, right? Is it more of like the person who just wants to tap in the World Cup because it's like, I don't really know what this is about? Or is it they want to go really direct and speak, in a kind of the very soccer specific way and try to do things. Cause like, it's just, Miami's just cool, creative, talented people who are like working together to do things, right? In a similar way to a lot of other cities I've seen, in their own way. But yeah, you have that kind of that art and the fashion and the lifestyle all coming together there. And I feel like you definitely get a sense of that. But in terms of the soccer, the strength is that there's people from all over the world, and then they're kind of bringing their interests and soccer culture from that too, which is cool. But it can feel almost similar. I see this a little bit in LA. It's like everybody kind of has their little pockets, and there's not as much, it's like almost, it is so big and there's so much going on that people can have their own little internal communities, whether you're more into like the Colombian soccer or the Argentine or England. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in Miami, but it really depends on how you play it.
Okay, yep, I agree. When it comes to on a corporate side, I feel like Miami is one of the host cities where if a brand was looking for cultural alignment based upon FIFA as, an organization. And that's what I love about what we like to call the greatest game in the world. The way soccer brings people together. There was that documentary about apartheid in Africa, but they were still able to come together to play soccer. To me, that's like phenomenal. That's just to me mind blowing. It's like, okay, you're dealing with apartheid, but you can still play soccer together. Okay. So, but the brands have to understand culture, and a lot of brands do not understand culture here in the US. So, I feel like they're going to miss the alignment. And what I mean by that is, and I'll just put it out there, you cannot just show one ethnicity and throw in one more ethnicity and think that that representation of your brand is going to work inside of the World Cup tournament and the events. You need to show that you understand cultural relevance and diversity. And I feel that a lot of brands they don't, so they're going to miss out on that altogether. But I'm putting it out there that if you needed to see how to
Mm-hmm.
do it, look at Miami
Yeah.
with the storytelling and everything. What was the food like in Miami, Andrew? What can the fans expect?
Yeah, you definitely have, like, you've got people from everywhere. You've got a ton of different food. No, obviously Cuban food, Haitian food, a lot like Caribbean influence, of course, a really bit of everything. And then you have, the very upscale fine dining
Mhm.
experiences too. So yeah, definitely variety of the food. And then the music, it's like, I feel like it's one of those places where you hear it, you hear Miami, you feel Miami in that sense that there's an atmosphere around the place too. So yeah, I think that's when I think of Miami and what this tournament will be for people. It's just all of our senses, right? All the different senses we have are going to be really, really served and activated in a place like Miami.
I agree with that. And in some brands, they are also going to focus on soccer fan community and they're going to miss it. That's not what's going to happen in Miami because Miami is more culturally diverse. They are going to be looking for the experience to tie back into their country playing. So that needs to be top of mind. Like you mentioned, Cape Verde,
Mm-hmm.
Haiti.
Yep.
Did you say this was their first time being in the World Cup?
For them, it's like 50 years or so that
50
Haiti will
years.
be in it.
Years. And
Yeah.
then which one did you mention that this is their first time being in the World
Yep.
Cup?
Yeah. Cape Verde is the first
Cape
timer. Yeah.
Verde?
Cape Verde is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
First time. So what
Yeah.
you should do, if you are a brand activating in Miami, you should do a storytelling for Cape Verde. Like Cape Verdeans
Mm-hmm.
storytelling, and tie in your brand to their story. That is the winning play for Miami. If you just put up a couple of kids kicking a soccer ball and then it transitions to now
Sure.
they're adults kicking in the ball, or you transition to Messi, it's going to land flat. It is going to land flat. Also, another thing about Miami that we mentioned, the luxury tier, you need to make sure that your strategy is around the luxury tier. Like, you don't have to necessarily have a strategy for the person who has to count every dollar. You mentioned like the even the luxury restaurants. I
Hmm.
still suggest that they have a minimized menu, but you can have a minimized menu and still, offer a premium experience. You can still sell out because you have that type of fan base that's coming to Miami. We're talking people that are of royalty status coming to Miami. So, it's going to be, so you still have that demand surge, but you have demand surge on a luxury tier.
Yes.
'Cause, we've heard of not lots, we've heard of yachts selling out, companies that
That's so
rent
I haven't heard about the
yachts.
yachts. They're selling out yachts in Miami. They're like your World
Yes.
Cup yacht. Wow. That should have been on my radar. Maybe it will. If I get to Miami, I gotta investigate the yacht
Absolutely.
super soccer fans.
Yes, we all have to, and hopefully you can get us on a few of them, Andrew, because I'm ready, but
At least if I can get a
yeah.
can side, that's the best I can do. I don't know about a guest list. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Jayme, you'd be on it, of course, if I can swing it.
please, we want to, so listen, if there's anyone that is, leasing a yacht in Miami, call us up. We're ready to come and
Yes.
just do a little story, just a little story. But, yeah, that's the good. That is the good. Now, there's a few things operationally that we gotta talk about Miami. Weather, security. Security is not just at the venue. Miami's maritime has also expressed increased challenges with access points, also international VIPs that are coming to Miami, the nightlife ecosystem, the celebration concentration, all of this, which is fun for the fans, it creates fundamental challenges for the host city for security. Also, weather, it is going to be hurricane season, and no one can predict the weather, and it is going to be hurricane season. So, my what do you have to say to those things, Andrew, and how can you help our audience?
Yeah, I think weather. Yeah, we're getting towards kind of the beginning of hurricane season as the tournament wears on. But regardless, it's just it's Florida. It's a peninsula. You can get a strong rainstorm at any moment. It's going to be humid, right? You hope if you're close to the beach, you get a little bit of a breeze. So I think that's something to consider. Like just like we talked about with Texas, and again, like with most of the cities on our list, that's going to be a consideration for sure. Security, yeah, I think like this ties in a little bit maybe with overall logistics of the city where there's not a ton of like the public transit access really. I did see, at least for the stadium, they're trying to introduce this like these different shuttle hubs. That was a challenge a couple years ago, and Miami hosted the Copa America, which is, I mentioned the European Championships. Copa America is the South American, quote unquote World Cup. So every country plays in it, and they hosted it in the States. And I know they had some challenges. Now that's a little bit of apples and oranges because this is a FIFA event versus Copa America, which is the South American Federation. So it's separate organizations. So they're, the amount of forethought and planning and things like that are going to be different. It's a different scale. But yeah, I think a big piece that comes up from that too, and again, I don't, just tangential to the security piece is like those logistics, right? You're going to get around very, very, in many ways, very car dependent too. It's like one of those where everything takes pretty much an hour. You're constantly on live somehow, or I've never seen such difficult, and such constant road construction work. And I've never missed so many exits, even with a GPS, as I did going around Miami trying to figure out where to go. So I think somewhat similar, like we talked about with Dallas, to be mindful of is, what neighborhoods might you want to activate in? And as a fan, what neighborhoods you want to stay in based on that kind of the vibe and the personality in that area. Don't maybe think that, hey, we'll be, here one day and here the other. It's like, you're either going to be on your yacht, having your yacht private parties. Maybe you'll sneak off the South Beach, or you'll be in Brickell or Wynwood. So I think, again, it's very much a city where it's like you do all the work to get there and then just try to have enough things to do in that area to enjoy yourself for a few days at a time. Even though, again, Miami has so much to offer, but there's just some of those logistics, security challenges where it's a little bit better just to stay put, kind of find a little routine in one given walkable space.
I agree. I agree. And thank you for sharing that. And I think I would change my angle now if I was advising a client in Miami based upon what you just said. Boy, my first question, especially when you talk about security, and you've brought up the Copa incident. So
Mm-hmm.
pull it up. After I finish saying what I have to say, you might as well tell the audience about it. I heard a little bit about it. So we might as well talk about it because you brought it up a couple times, and I have heard about it. Um, in closed doors, so we might as well just talk about it. But going back to what you just said, I think I would change my angle in Miami, and I would actually focus on fan base. I don't believe focusing on global soccer fans in Miami is going to work. I would switch and I would focus on the Brazil fans if I was activating in Miami. You probably need to focus on a fan base versus global soccer fans. And just because I think the specifics are in the strategy in Miami more than anywhere else because of the security, challenges that have come up. Hard Rock Stadium, I've heard some things that have happened, you know, at Hard Rock Stadium. We've also heard about the traffic, that it's already difficult to move around in Miami. Like the traffic is already difficult. But when you have traffic issues, you already can't really move around. It's hot. You may be dealing with, just a lot, maybe the walking. We haven't even talked about that. You probably gonna have to walk a little bit or a lot. We haven't talked about that yet. Yes, so
Mm-hmm.
that would be I would change that most definitely. We also mentioned heat, storms, and the activations. I have to put it out there. Miami has come out and said they may have to, first they said they may have to cancel the World Cup fan festival area because the funding was delayed and they don't think they're going to meet the deadline. What do you think would happen, Andrew, in Miami if the fan festival does not happen?
I mean, I think it would be a big loss, obviously, right? I think the Fan Fest is going to have a lot of upside for people that might not have tickets or, might not be able to get into the stadium.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that, I feel like in general, Miami is this place where it's like a high risk but high reward. Like you're talking about, even down to a strategy of picking one group because it can be such a challenge to navigate through. I mean, they've got some great matchups and you have such vibrant cultures and an awesome mix of people that are there. But then you do have, the traffic, the heat that we've talked about. I think without the Fan Fest, that is going to open up some opportunities for other like businesses, right? That can host, we're talking our food and beverage options. Maybe some other people step up and say, hey, we're going to do something more impromptu in our, in a big parking lot or a lot or something like that. Or, we've got a big indoor warehouse space or something to activate. But I think too, coming back to my earlier point of like, there's a strong grassroots community and there's already such a existing soccer passion and infrastructure where I think like, again, it'll be a loss and a missed opportunity. But on a grassroots level, I think people will, it would still be missed, but like they'll be able to pick up the piece and like do it in their way, if that makes sense, which I think to an extent they're going to be doing anyway, because again, it's a 45-day event and the Fan Fest is not going to be able to cater to every single fan every single day. So yeah, and as you're talking about the luxury and things, I'm thinking about, and obviously it's important to be in front of the visiting fans, but I'm thinking about, you already have such a huge population, but a robust like customer base just in Miami of people who live there. And, how can you maybe connect with the people who will be there after the World Cup as well. So yeah, I'd rather not entertain that idea in general of no fan fest, but I think that like there will be enough going things to complement that in general, and maybe that just would take a little more importance in the grand scheme.
Okay. I appreciate that. Miami has come out and said that they are expecting international VIP movement, presence, attendees. A lot of celebrities are planning to be in Miami. So those brands that are activating, I would say you definitely have to have, if I was advising you, inside of our activation plan, I would have 2 things. I would have, security scenario. I also would have a weather contingency plan. Not because you think it's going to happen, it's if it happens, and if it happens, it's better to have your team prepared. So, for example, if you are, a restaurant that has a beautiful outside patio and, you were going to, have indoor and outdoor, you should have a weather contingency for those. Let's say if you have 50 tables outside and if it's pouring raining and those 50 people need to either move inside or you need to have some sort of cancellation or rain check, it's better to already have the plan so that you are not reacting, you are providing, because there is a difference in the two. Miami also, I read this. Miami is earmarked to be the most expensive World Cup environment on earth. Like I said, hotels, they have one hotel at 236% higher than this time last year. Hospitality, transportation, nightlife, premium experiences, all prices have quadrupled. Also, with the controversial FIFA ticketing prices, affordability for Airbnbs, but it is supposed to be the most expensive, and I think they said that Miami is looking to bring in about $4 billion during the World Cup
Wow.
games. And so I want to talk about 2 things that we definitely have to talk about is the parking issue. If a fan is going to park, Andrew, you have field intelligence intel on what type of shoes people need to wear, because if the girls are wearing the cute little slingback sandals,
Yeah.
by the time they get to the gate, their feet are gonna be hurting. So might as well just share it. Just tell everybody what's going on.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, though, that you make for all of these. In most cases, like as we go through this series, there's only going to be a few cities, unfortunately, that we talk about where it's like, actually, it's going to be a pretty neutral to pleasant experience to get into the stadium, right? When we talk about just how our stadiums are set up here in the US, and the same, more or less same challenges will be in Mexico and to an extent in the Canadian cities. So yeah, again, kind of looking back at that Copa America 2 years ago, which was a bit of a test, for what the World Cup will be. Again, some of those security issues at that time, I don't think we're going to see in this case. I think, again, it's a totally different organizing body. You had talked about with Boston of, Justin Timberlake example of owning it. So really a lot of those things would be up to him necessarily. There's some of that. So I think in that sense, but yes, I saw that, typically parking is an issue where people are walking a mile, 2 miles from like the official parking lots to get to the stadium, right? So imagine doing that in that heat. You're adding at least probably a good hour to the experience. Who knows what kind of checkpoints might be within that. I know that on the host committee website, they did announce that they're doing, I think they're calling it like their shuttle hub system. So there's going to be 4 hubs that are not directly next to the stadium, but a few miles out that I imagine are better suited for basically, driving to or getting dropped off at. And then from there, you get a shuttle bus and there will be a constant flow. of those shuttle buses. So I hope that fixes the situation. And I imagine, that any parking situation that will be very expensive. We've seen across a lot of these cities have announced like, 100, 150, $200 parking fees. And I think Miami, again, like you said, with all the other things, that's not going to be an exception when it comes to the cost of this experience. Again, I think Miami is one of those places where people go there all the time for reasons that are not the World Cup. Those reasons will still be there. And if you're the type of person that is drawn to the experience Miami gives you, you'll probably have an amazing time. But yes, maybe be a little bit more functional and practical on your game day fit, what you're wearing, have the water bottle, make sure you're reading all the security restrictions about what you can and cannot bring, what your bag could look like, if it's got to be, see-through, and definitely kind of make sure you're being smart about how you're taking care of yourself, because it could be a little bit of an ordeal, a lot of patience, a lot of waiting times when it comes to the Miami Stadium, I could expect.
Okay. I'm gonna just dig in a little bit deeper into the Copa America because we brought it up. Some people may not know about it, but I think we have to do our due diligence with those that are watching. They know like what we're talking about when we say the Copa America incident. Let's put it that way. So I'm gonna read a little bit about it, and then Andrew, I'll turn it back over to you and you can talk about it so that you can tell, our listeners what you believe is going to be different from what happened 2 years ago. So at the Copa America final, which was at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami in July of 2024, an estimated 20 to 30,000 ticketless fans overwhelmed security. Gates were breached 2 hours before kickoff. Staff eventually abandoned ticket checks and let everyone in to prevent a crush. So what I'm saying is they eventually just let everyone in because they were going to crush people. Ticketless fans occupied VIP sections, sat in other people's seats, and crawled through stadium vents. The match was delayed 82 minutes. Even players of the teams left the locker room to help their families get inside of the Hard Rock Stadium. Argentina's McAllister's mother, I hope I pronounced his name right, but you can correct
Yep, you
it.
got it. You got it.
Okay. McAllister's mother described the experience as inhumane. The after action report found that the stadium failed to complete their intelligence because the agency that they hired had not anticipated that scale of a rush. Hard Rock Stadium is hosting 7 World Cup matches. So that is the intelligence that I have on the Copa America. Andrew, please set us straight, set the record straight. Is this all true? These are, articles that we pulled together from the web, from those that have been there. We did interview one person in Boston that actually was at Copa America. They did have a ticket that experienced this, especially when they said they saw people coming through the vents. Can't even imagine.
Yeah, which is
so can you?
Yeah.
I lost him.
Sorry, you got me now. I know it broke.
We
up for a
lost
second.
you.
I bet. I can see you. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Because we want to make sure we hear everything.
Back. Yeah.
Okay, now I can hear you now. So
Cool.
So talk about Copa America.
Yeah. The air vent story, I thought that only happened in like these action movies, right? That people crawl around in air vents. I didn't know that was a real thing, but it happened at Copa America. Again, I was not there. I'm going very much on secondary sources. Again, I think that obviously we hope that lessons will be more than learned. I think one of those issues was that people without tickets were able to get very close to the stadium, and that kind of created the conditions for that like swell of people. What you didn't touch on is, and what I saw like the day of on social media was, kids crying and people like being injured, like literally like one of the worst case scenario. And it was really just largely mismanagement. So I believe that will be changed. I imagine that if you don't have a ticket, you will not be, I mentioned those like shuttle hubs, right? Where you can go to a location and they take you. You're not even going to be able to get in there without showing your ticket. I think in that sense, they're going to learn from the experience. So we certainly hope, and I imagine that with Miami, we'll have 7 matches that'll be done. But it was, when you're seeing those kind of images, when you're seeing the players having to worry about their own family safety, when you're seeing kids like upset because of everything going, it's like the worst thing you could imagine for what is supposed to be like a really joyous occasion. And it was the championship match. It was the final match. It was the crowning achievement of the whole tournament. So it was a really shame for it to go that way. And hopefully, then that's just an example that, not only in Miami, but across the country, future events can learn from. So yeah, that's definitely kind of a black eye on the history of, I think, the game there in Miami. But, we are hoping that it will be much different this time around, and it'll be a different scenario.
Do you have any field intelligence or intel of what they have put in place, what measures they've put in place so that the experience is not repeated of what happened 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think the closest would be, I don't know for sure with that. When I was there, it was about 6 months ago, but I remember going, to the stadium in all these cities, whether I can get inside or not. In this case, it was, I think, a Sunday morning. And so I had just parked and, you can see in the video, it seems like I'm miles away from the stadium, but I'm really just in the parking lot that's like adjacent to it, but it's just a gigantic parking lot, and that was the only gate that was open. So again, that speaks a little bit to our walking situation. But I think that, and I've heard this in other cities, like there's going to be a lot more limitations on where you can even go without a ticket, right? You mentioned the tailgating bans at one point, again, which
Mhm.
has been rescinded, but I would not be surprised in some cases where it's like certain cities are making it clear from a security perspective, you can't even get in the parking lot if you don't have a ticket, right? Or get on
Wow.
any of these transit options to deal with that issue directly, right? And they don't have to be able to police it and be liable in the stadium and stuff. Now, obviously, some of these places that have more like, to your user, like that actual corridor, really things you can walk to and are around that's going to be harder. And again, that's part of the atmosphere. So I think that's something to keep in mind for Miami is if you are one of those fans going without the ticket to enjoy the vibe, don't even really think about, going to the stadium. And it's just kind of gonna, you could be somewhere else watching a game in an air conditioned bar somewhere. You could be sitting out on the beach. There's a lot of better places to be. So, but I imagine, without being on the inside myself, those are some things that I've seen and institute some sort of those checkpoints to make sure it's a more managed atmosphere.
Okay, okay. And you mentioned the parking, so I mean, we're already on the ugly of the good, bad, and the ugly. And when you and I were talking and you were kind of sharing, like, the first initial intel of Miami, is this the one that you had mentioned that there is a possibility that if someone is driving their car and they have to park in one of the areas where they're allowing parking, that you could possibly be walking for an entire hour, like from where you have to park to the stadium? Is that Hard Rock, or is that another stadium?
Yeah, again from seeing that on social media and things, particularly from that Copa America tournament or other exhibition matches that have been played at the Hard Rock. I believe a lot of the overflow parking can be up to an hour walk, right? That you're out there and there's nothing really around it. So again, when you're talking about the your fashion choices for the day and things and being prepared, have that in mind. Again, I think that I would not only to the brands, and you talked about, tracking the fan from the airport or however they get to the city onwards. That's something that brands are going to do their research on because, I think Miami might be a place where you're limited in terms of activations anywhere near the stadium. And so, that's something to be mindful of. And as a fan, definitely make sure you're looking at the official host committee site and the Miami-Dade public transit and seeing all those options of, how to actually enjoy your time without getting stuck. You gotta do some of your research so you can have a good experience.
Absolutely. And it's very unfortunate as a brand that has sponsored the World Cup, that the biggest opportunity is also the number one city that you are going to be blocked from the most traffic to allow the fans to have that experience because of what happened 2, 3 years ago, if that makes sense. So, like, our tier 1 sponsors, even the tier 2 sponsors, McDonald's is a tier 2 sponsor. So if you think about if McDonald's wanted to have, this beautiful setup for, and have Ronald McDonald to come out and, have, something for the kids and pass out french fries and all of those things, pass out coupons, which is probably something that they're gonna do so that that can go, and because even if you get a 10% coupon from McDonald's, you have to go to a McDonald's to spend it to
That's
get
right.
10% off.
Yeah.
So, they're gonna make a lot more than they're gonna give out on the paper. So, but the problem with that is they're also very similar to Boston. Their activation is, we gotta look that up. That's even if they have the activation. It's we already know from their officials it is going to be nowhere in the stadium corridor
Hmm.
because of, unfortunately, what happened at Copa America. So we definitely will continue to watch this. I did see also, we also saw an article that came across that F1, as of the recording, I believe Miami was approved for, they filed for an emergency federal emergency grant, and they were approved. The amount is still floating around, but it's supposed to be around $50 million to help if they do get the funding. It seems like F1 area is going to be where they will have the event. Um, Andrew, I'm hoping you'll be able to speak to like what that location is like so that the fans and the sponsors can have a little bit more. I don't know if you can look it up, but while you're doing that, I'll tell you guys what we've
Hmm.
heard. And this is as of yesterday. As of yesterday, the glamorous Miami Grand Prix Hard Rock's Stadium is now facing a massive challenge. The Miami Grand Prix, which is the F1 venue, has been offered to be the fan festival area for FIFA World Cup 2026, but it is less than 40 days to the World Cup. This is immense pressure. Can Miami pull off one of the biggest venue transformations with a countdown already very risky? So that's the news that's coming out of Miami. And that is as of yesterday. So I don't have a lot of intel on that. So can you
Yeah,
help
I
us?
just look. It looks like that location for the circuit is at Hard Rock, so it is at the World Cup stadium where they'll be playing. So in that case, we might have to, walk back everything we had just said about the checkpoints and the access. They might have the physical space, but I see major logistical, log jams and issues trying to actually get people there. I think again that comes back to brands listening here and fans wanting to have a good time is pick your neighborhood of Miami that fits your vibe and kind of plant your flag there, and that's your spot. If you got tickets for games, awesome. Yeah, you're gonna really wanna, there's a lot to enjoy for a lot of people in Miami, but you're gonna have to have your logistics down really well to be able to do so.
Wow. So I just did a brief look, just doing like a brief Google search on F1 Grand Prix area for FIFA World Cup Miami 2026. And when I say this is new, I don't have any of the major news outlets even picking it up yet. So this is going to be very interesting because if you're saying that logistically, I mean, because we even heard about this here in Boston. And so that was supposedly the reason why our activation here in Boston could not be close to Gillette Stadium because the operational side here in Boston looked at what happened in at Copa America and wanted to figure out what was the best way of not having something like that happen here in Boston, in Foxborough. So supposedly that was the reason why they said, no, the fan festival cannot be anywhere near. We don't want a lot of ticketed fans congregating that close. But it seems like if you're telling me that the F1 Grand Prix is, did you say right across the street from the stadium?
That's what it looks like. Well, Wikipedia, you can see the Hard Rock Stadium and stuff like right behind it, at least where the grandstand is. So I imagine it's a big space given it's a racetrack. So it's kind of, a big circuit, but somewhere within there, it's still in the grand scheme of Miami, it's at the stadium.
It's at the stadium.
Yeah.
So it's either they have some sort of unbelievable security plan that we know nothing about, or they have not learned a single thing that happened in 2024. Which one do you think it is?
If this is, I don't know. I don't know if I can say we're not sure on the source of this here.
True.
I feel like they probably are doing everything they can to have learned the lesson. So it's got to be some kind of protocol, and significant investment in that security is going to have to be the move for Miami.
True, true. And that is what we're trying to do as well. This is editorial intelligence, and like Andrew just mentioned, this is coming hot off the press. This is something that my team found and sent it over, but this is coming directly from Miami. Local reporters are reporting this. So their sports news is reporting this. So we don't know. Before we started recording, we were told that they didn't even know if they were going to even have a fan festival because they didn't have enough money. So we will continue to, look at it. And if we have to do an update, we'll do an update. But that is Miami. What would be the last final thought that you want to provide for Miami, Andrew?
Yeah, for Miami, again, I think it's a high risk, high challenge city. I think it's somewhere where you could have tons of amazing, memorable experiences. You're going to get that access to the beach that not many other cities are going to offer. You're going to get such a vibrance of cultures that are there and then countries that are coming to visit. So I think there's, I think there's a lot of excellent options you can have, but just be aware of what your goals are and plans are, and try to have it as thought out as possible. And we hope that everybody's a great time, but there's a great grassroots and soccer fandom in the city that is going to be a great, a platform for this tournament.
I agree. I agree, Andrew. These cities are not simply putting on soccer matches. It deeper intelligence than that. And I hope Andrew and I have been able to portray that on this show. And I have a few things that I've written down for like the brands and if you're activating in these three areas, but also other host cities. There's just a few that I wrote down that I want to mention to you all. You need to focus on the infrastructure pressure, the tourism surges, corporate activation, ecosystems, security operations, transportation, impression, the cultural expectations from over 200 and plus nations. And what I mean, even with the corporate activations, there are still, as of recording this, we are 37 days, 36 days out. I'm not sure, but we're less than 40 days. Let's just put that out there. Less than 40 days. There are still billion-dollar corporations that are in the pre-planning phase. What does that mean? That means they have not yet planned their host party. They have not yet planned what their teams, what their stakeholders are going to do. They live inside of your ecosystem. They live inside of your host city. If you have a restaurant, if you have a product, a service, an offer, you need to just reach out, find those people that have not publicly said they're doing something, reach out to them. I have one client that just got a contract with one of the soccer teams that's coming to Boston. And just like that, landed a six-figure contract, just like that, because we did just a little bit of outreach. So don't think that the teams, that the stakeholders, that the sponsors, that the corporations that are around your city, that they have their plans ready. They do not. And this is why I say that FIFA World Cup 2026 is not just about sports. Yes, it is about the game, but it is about the fan experience. The fan is the number one driver. It is the only reason that we even have a game, because if the fans weren't there, if the fans never purchased a ticket, if the fans never purchased any apparel, we wouldn't even have the money to pay the players to even play to entertain us. Same thing with these sponsors, Coca-Cola, Unilever, Airbnb, McDonald's, and the list goes on and on. If they didn't have the customer, the client, the fan to purchase, if the fan never had a good experience with their product, with their brand, they would not have the finances to be able to even pay the sponsorship dollars that they have to pay, that's in the millions. I mean, cities were paying, low tier 5 to 10 million. Most host city sponsors start between 25 to 30 million. Tier 1 sponsors pay between, upwards to, some have paid 150 million, some have paid 100 million. It's hundreds of millions of dollars that are being poured into this one event, but it all goes down to the fan. You find out what the fan wants, you cater to the fan, you will always have a return on investment. Now, Andrew, I want you to come back on and tell people how they can reach out to you and what it is that you could offer if someone is in one of these host cities as a brand, as an organization, and they needed someone like you, boots on the ground, that can not only share these things, but actually film and put those
Mhm.
things into, a body of work. Talk
Yeah,
to us about that.
absolutely. Yeah, with this project, like I said, I've been going to 13 of the host cities. If there's a place you want to activate and you want more people tapped into the soccer community, or kind of get more detailed, I can help and consult and connect people in that way. But a lot of the core of what we've been offering is this storytelling, right? Tapping into the local soccer communities and really exploring the places through the game. Like we've been talking about, there's so many dimensions to it. So if you're somebody who's looking to say, hey, we might not necessarily be able to do that in-person activation, or we want to have a really strong storytelling on social to complement that. We've got an existing project going on that is easy to tap into, where we're covering these stories in the different host cities. And it's that fan first, it's the emotion, it's the reaction, flags waving, people jumping around, hugging each other, crying. It's really that core of the emotion is kind of what we try to tap into. And whether that is, at whatever activation you got, at some kind of event, a lot of the interviews and getting people's takes, that's what we've been specializing in here with Because Football. So able to really help you a little bit on that soccer culture and strategy piece like we've been talking about today, and then actually being able to execute the really authentic storytelling as well.
Man, I love it. I love it. Did you guys hear that? I mean, I'm telling you, if you're a mid-market operator, if you're a brand and you need that part of storytelling, I would reach out. I'd reach out to Andrew. We're going to make sure that you have his information in the show notes as well. And I would say, for me, if you're a brand, if you're an operator, if you're an organization and you just really don't even know how you fit in global events, global moments, if you go to my website, www.jaymewashington, and I spell Jamie with a Y, and we'll make sure we put it in the notes. But if you go to my website, I have a complimentary diagnostic assessment tool. It's like 10 questions that I ask most of my brands when they come in as the intake form, but I've consolidated it. It's 10 questions, may take you max of 3 minutes. Once you finish the assessment, it's going to kind of give you a little bit of a picture of where you are when it comes to a global event. And then I also will share a few options, and it's complimentary. So jump on my website, fill that out. And as I close, I wrote something out for you guys. I want to say inside of this conversation today, it is built for any brand or operator planning to activate around FIFA World Cup. The question today should be for you: are you positioned to win, or are you positioned to just spend? Find out by speaking to myself, find out by speaking to Andrew, not later, but now. And that is our first episode. I don't know how we're
All
going to
right.
turn this out. It may be multiple episodes, but I tell you, this has been amazing debrief. Andrew, how do you feel? How do you feel?
Feel good. Yeah, I feel like we got to cover like really deep into each of these cities, and a lot of what people can expect on the fan culture side and the business side, and how to like make the most of it, right? And help to you know, help these brands grow, but also tap into what I say is the biggest not only sporting but cultural event in the world. So happy to do it, and appreciate you leading the way on it, Jayme. It was great to hear your insight as well. So it was a great episode.
Likewise, friend. Likewise. All right, everybody. Andrew and I will be back for another episode covering 3 more host cities. So bye for now, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Right.